Urgent Vikings fan, look at what just happened. Nobody saw this coming, huh? But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel because we bring you daily videos with the latest your team news, and don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss anything. Which do the Vikings need more in the NFL draft, a cornerback or a safety? In the latest episode of the Access Vikings podcast, Emily Leiker and Ben Goessling take stock of the defensive draft prospects in this month's draft. In the first of a series of podcasts previewing the NFL draft, Emily Leiker and Ben Goessling of the Minnesota Star-Tribune discuss a handful of defensive back prospects who'd be good fits for the Vikings, including potential first-rounders and those who might still be on the board further in the draft. Plus, they talk about the Vikings' compensatory draft pick outlook for 2026 and who could replace Cam Bynum's role as Josh Metellus' Codens captain next year. Among the prospects discussed are Texas' Jahdae Barron, Georgia's Malachi Starks, Notre Dame's Xavier Watts, East Carolina's Shaven Revel Jr., and Virginia's Jonas Sanker. Pausing this news just to say that if you want YouTube to keep recommending the latest Vikes news to you, it's very important that you leave a like on this video. Thanks. Now let's get back to the news. Asante Samuel Jr. would complete Minnesota's overhaul. In the secondary, Asante Samuel Jr. is the best remaining defensive back in free agency. He's been loosely linked to multiple teams this offseason without clearly indicating where he wants to sign. The Minnesota Vikings are one of those teams that have been in contact with Samuel, and he'd be a great fit in Brian Flores' defense. The Vikings missed bringing Charvarius Ward or DJ Reed in as premier free agent additions to a developing defensive backroom. The addition of Isaiah Rodgers has given the Vikings flexibility on the angle the team takes with the position group. However, adding Samuel would transform Minnesota's secondary entirely. Samuel is a surefire starter and leader in handling assignments on the outside, elevating the position group. When you consider Makey Blackman's raw talent and ball skills, Byron Murphy Jr.'s nose for the ball, and Isaiah Rodgers' experience in high-pressure situations, adding a proven young stud like Samuel would complete Minnesota's revamp of its secondary. Flores likes to run a lot of cover 2 and cover 0 looks with his disguises and stunts. Cover looks require corners to be the soundest part of that rep, outside of the initial pressure getting home on the quarterback. In cover 0, the man coverage assignment takes precedence. In cover 2, jamming receivers at the line and engaging in your zone underneath the safeties becomes the play. Both of these looks put high stakes on corners at a time when quarterbacks are getting the ball out quickly. The Vikings have struggled late in seasons under Flores when falling back into quarters or other zone looks, leaving too big of gaps for the opposing quarterback. Samuel is great in cover looks and has the discipline to know when to bite down on a route in his designated zone. Coming down on bigger receivers is highly risky because it could lead to a big play if you are unable to wrap up or make a play on the ball. Samuel showcased what he can do in man coverage against bigger receivers with the Los Angeles Chargers. He displayed a good mix of being a sound tackling corner while having the patience to break on balls in the red zone. The Vikings could use more of a lockdown type inside the 20-yard line. It's unclear how far talks have gotten between Samuel and the Vikings, or if Samuel has progressed with any other team. Teams often wait until after draft night to finalize deals so they can keep their options open regarding points of focus within the draft. In terms of the best fit, Minnesota seems to have everything to set Samuel up for success as the leading man in the secondary. If Samuel remains on the free agent market past the draft, Minnesota's first-round selection will offer more context if a deal with Samuel seems imminent. Ultimately, they should push to sign him because the 25-year-old Asante Samuel Jr. would be the perfect candidate. Leaving Commanders for Vikings, Jonathan Allen went from an F locker room to an A when the NFL Players Association issued its team report cards. The Commanders got an F for the quality of their locker room, and the Vikings got an A. Jonathan Allen sees the difference. Allen played the first 8 years of his NFL career in Washington before signing in Minnesota this offseason, and when he checked out his new locker room, he was impressed and also disappointed by the quality of the locker room he'd had until now. When I came here and see they have kombucha and the drinks in the fridge and the facility, I feel like I've been cheated my last 8 years. These guys living like this, it's incredible, Allen said on Chris Long's Greenlight podcast. Talking to these guys here and how they focus on getting you to perform at your best when your best is needed, I love that. Allen said the Commanders built a good culture last year under new coach Dan Quinn, but he loves the culture they've already established with the Vikings. A big part of that is the men in the locker room, but the locker room itself is a part of it too. Vikings ownership didn't scrimp, and that means Vikings players feel like they're going to work in a place where the franchise is invested in making them the best players they can be. Al Harris wastes no time signing ex-Cowboys CB after expected release. The Dallas Cowboys tried everything in their power to make former Oregon State cornerback Nahshon Wright a player who could occupy a starting role on their defense. But they eventually gave up on their developmental plan and traded him to the Minnesota Vikings. After a disappointing season with Minnesota, Wright was cut. It seems like it took the Vikings 1 year to find out the same thing Dallas did in 3. For all of Wright's physical talent, he seems to be missing one factor that can help set him apart when compared to the rest of the league. Wright was somehow thrown a lifeline by yet another NFC team as the Chicago Bears signed him immediately after the Vikings cut him loose. When looking at the Bears' new defensive coaching staff, their interest in Wright suddenly makes a ton of sense. Al Harris, who was one of Dallas' top defensive assistants under Mike McCarthy over the last few years, latched on with the Bears as defensive backs coach and defensive pass game coordinator under Ben Johnson. Harris is seemingly taking on Wright as a personal reclamation project. Former Cowboys CB Nahshon Wright signs on with Al Harris. Bears Wright was an unusual NFL draft prospect, as his 6'4" body was counteracted by a skinny frame at under 200 pounds. Despite being picked earlier than most expected, it became clear early on that Wright didn't have the skills needed to evolve into a solid starting cornerback. In 3 seasons with Dallas, Wright would start just 3 games, break up just 5 passes, and haul in just 1 interception. His Pro Football Focus grade was never above 60, 1 in his 3 seasons with the Cowboys, which is a sign he never managed to put it all together. The Cowboys and Vikings agreed to trade underperforming young cornerbacks last offseason, with Wright heading up north and Andrew Booth Jr. coming to Dallas. While Booth is still technically on the Cowboys, he hasn't put together many great plays on the field that fans will be excited about. Harris is taking a bit of a risk here, as Wright never managed to take that step forward, despite 3 years of tutoring from the former Pro Bowl corner in Dallas. If Wright doesn't last in Chicago, it might be tough for him to find another team that is going to be willing to take a chance on him. Vikings linked to potential draft trade after $300 million offseason plan. The Minnesota Vikings will enter the 2025 draft with few roster needs thanks to their aggressive approach to free agency. However, there are positions to watch as their time on the clock approaches. Minnesota owns an NFL 04 selections in the 2025 draft with 2 picks in the top 100. ESPN's Matt Miller considers the Vikings prime candidates to trade back, possibly out of the first round, because of that. This would be an easy way for them to pick up more draft capital, especially if there are teams wanting to get back into round 1 for a quarterback or a falling pass rusher, Miller wrote on April 10th. Should Minnesota decide to stay and pick at number J24, cornerback and safety are areas it could address. The Athletic's Alec Lewis also believes a trade down could be prudent for the Vikings. The Vikings' plan at the top of the draft is not obvious. Odds makers don't have a good feel for the approach they might take. Will it be a cornerback, an interior defensive lineman, a safety? It's also possible the Vikings could trade back to create some additional draft value, Lewis wrote on April 10th. That path might make the most sense, especially considering the widely held belief that the 2025 draft has ample starting caliber players in the middle rounds. Lewis proposed a trade with the Cleveland Browns. The Vikings would trade the number 24 pick for no's 33, 67, and 192 in Lewis' scenario. Lewis also projected the Vikings to select Texas safety Andrew Makuba and UCF cornerback Mac McWilliams in the 3rd and 5th rounds, respectively. Insider pushes for Vikings to add to CB room. Whichever direction the Vikings go in the first round of the draft, they could and probably should target a cornerback at some point. The upside of the Vikings' $300 million free agent signing spree is it left them without immediate, glaring needs heading into the draft, ESPN's Kevin Seifert wrote in the same report as Miller. If there is a position where the Vikings could need a starter soon, it's cornerback behind presumptive starters Byron Murphy Jr. and Isaiah Rodgers. The Vikings coaching staff is high on Rodgers, but the group is largely unproven. Seifert expressed similar sentiments in an earlier report on the Vikings' draft needs. The team's top 4 corners this past season were all on expiring contracts, and only Byron Murphy Jr. has been resigned. Newcomers Isaiah Rodgers and Jeff Okudah, and holdover. Mackie Blackman aren't enough depth, Seifert wrote on April 1st. The other positional holes are longer term. The Vikings' top three defensive linemen, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, and Harrison Phillips, are between 29 and 32 years old. New center Ryan Kelly is 32 and on a short-term contract. Vikings get first-hand exposure to explosive CB prospect before 2025 NFL Draft. The Vikings' need for a young corner talent is more than speculation, with the team moving on a talented draft prospect coming off a maligned season. Former East Carolina CB Chevon Revel, a projected first-round pick who is recovering from ACL reconstruction, will visit the Bills, Colts, and Vikings this week. NFL Network's Tom Pelissero reported on X on April 7th. He'll also do the Combine medical. Recheck while in Indianapolis. NFL.com's Lance Zierlein compared Revel to Washington Commanders' CB Benjamin said just, "Big, long, and fast are the physical descriptors that stand out for the East Carolina corner. Revel is leggy when matching press. Release, but he's disruptive once he gets his hands on the wideout," Zierlein wrote. "He has ideal length and good vision from zone, and he should continue to improve in that coverage with more experience." And now, Vikings fan, I want to hear from you. What's your opinion on this? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I don't know. If you know this, but your opinion matters a lot for Vikes, you'll be back any moment with more Vikings news. Skol, Vikings!